Everyone in the village knew one rule: never follow a ghost into the forest at night. But one curious boy ignored the warning, and what he discovered was the village of the dead. Long ago, in a small village surrounded by thick forests and wide rivers, there lived a boy named Sunday. The village was peaceful and the people lived simple lives. They farmed during the day, told stories around the fire at night, and believed deeply in the unseen spirits that lived in the forests and rivers. But among all the children in the village, Tunde was the most curious. He was the kind of boy who would follow a strange sound just to see what made it. If people said a path was dangerous, Tunde wanted to walk it. If elders warned about the spirits in the forest, he wanted to see one with his own eyes. His grandmother, Mama Bisi, raised him. She was an old woman who had seen many seasons and knew many stories about the spirit world. One night, while they sat beside the fire eating roasted yam, she looked at Tunde carefully. Tunde, she said slowly, there are things in this world that the eyes should not chase. Tunde laughed. But how will we know the truth if we don't look? He replied. Mama Bisi sighed deeply. The spirits of the forest are clever, she warned. They know how to call the curious. But Tunde did not believe her. To him, spirits were only stories meant to scare children. One evening, the sun sank slowly behind the tall trees and painted the sky orange and purple. Mama Bisi handed Tunde a clay pot. Go fetch water from the stream, she said, but hurry back before the moon climbs high. Tunde nodded and walked down the narrow path that led to the stream at the edge of the forest. The village grew quiet behind him. By the time he reached the water, the sky had turned dark blue and the first stars had appeared. He knelt down and dipped the pot into the cool water. Suddenly, he heard something. Footsteps, slow, dragging. Tunde turned around. Across the stream stood a tall figure dressed in white clothes that flowed like mist. His feet did not seem to touch the ground. His face looked pale and his eyes were dark and empty. Tunde's heart jumped. For a moment, fear held him still. Then the figure slowly turned and began walking toward the forest. After a few steps, it stopped. It raised its long arm and beckoned for Tunde to follow. Tunde remembered his grandmother's warning, but curiosity burned stronger than fear. Who are you? He shouted. The figure said nothing. It only continued walking deeper into the forest. Tunde hesitated. Then he whispered to himself, I will only follow a little. And so he stepped into the forest. The deeper Tunde walked, the stranger the forest became. The trees grew taller, the air became colder. The sounds of the village disappeared. Even the crickets stopped singing. The white figure moved silently ahead of him, never turning around. Sometimes it seemed to glide rather than walk. They walked for what felt like hours. Then they reached a clearing. In the center of a clearing stood a strange village, but it was not like the village Tunde knew. The houses were old and crooked. The fires burned with blue flames, and the pale figures moved slowly between the huts. Tunde suddenly realized the truth. He had followed a ghost, and now he was in the village of the dead. The ghost who had led him there stepped inside the largest hut. Tunde followed carefully. Inside, a fire burned in the center. Around the fire sat many ghosts, old men, women, and children. All of them turned to stare at him. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. The ghost who brought him spoke for the first time. This boy followed me. The room filled with whispers. No living child has come here before. A very old ghost slowly stood up. His beard flowed like smoke. He walked toward Tunde and studied him carefully. "You are brave," the old ghost said. Then he shook his head. "Or very foolish." Tunde swallowed nervously. "I only wanted to know where you live." The ghost began murmuring again. Some laughed, others shook their heads. Finally, the old ghost raised his hand for silence. "Curiosity has brought you to the world of the spirits," he said, "but the living do not belong here." Tunde's voice trembled. "Please, I want to go home." The old ghost stared at him for a long moment. Then he reached into the fire and pulled out a glowing stone. Strangely, the fire did not burn him. He placed the stone in Tunde's hand. "When the rooster crows," the old ghost said, "you must run toward the sound." Tunde listened carefully. "You must run without stopping." The ghost leaned closer. "And whatever you hear behind you," his voice became cold, "do not look back." Ghosts around the fire began laughing softly. "If you look back," he whispered, "you will never leave this forest." Suddenly, the fire went out. Darkness filled the hut. Tunde heard whispers all around him. Cold breath brushed his neck. Strange hands touched his shoulders. Far away in the distance, a rooster crowed. Tunde ran. He ran faster than he had ever did in his life. Branches scratched him. Thorns tore his clothes. The whispers followed him. "Look back! Your grandmother is calling. Tunde! Tunde!" He almost turned, but he remembered the warning. Another rooster crowed. The voices became louder. Footsteps chased him through the forest. Something grabbed his shirt, but Tunde pulled free and kept running. Finally, he saw the edge of the forest. Morning light touched the trees. Tunde burst onto the village path and collapsed. Mama Bisi found him lying outside her hut at sunrise. "Tunde!" she cried. When he woke up, he told her everything. The ghosts, the village of spirits, the old goat's warning. Mama Bisi listened quietly. Then she opened his hand. The glowing stone had changed. It was now pure gold. Mama Bisi nodded slowly. "The spirit spared you," she said. "But remember this lesson." Tunde looked at her carefully. "What lesson?" She smiled faintly. "Curiosity can open doors." And then her face became serious. "But not every door leads back home." From that day on, Tunde was still curious, but he was no longer foolish. And even today, the elders of the village say that on very quiet nights, if you walk too close to the forest, you may see a pale figure standing between the trees, watching, waiting for another curious child to follow it home. If you enjoyed this, watch my next story about the bride who was a spirit. Thanks for watching.